Charming for the movement discussion. The last presentation presented the election as a maintaining election. The data seems to suggest that there is greater concern about China from the statistics we looked at. With that said, what does that say about Taiwan's security relationship with the United States? What is the direction that Taiwan would like to see it go based on the data and what you're seeing from the polling in Taiwan? Thank you.
And about the relation with the U.S., I'm sorry that I don't have the data about to survey Taiwanese attitudes toward the U.S. But I did conduct a focus group for young people last year about some security issues, and that focus group is for those aged between 20 and 29, and they do think that China becomes a big threat, and we should actually rely or lean toward U.S. It seems to be no choice. But one interesting part among young people is that they don't think Donald Trump is reliable at all. To be honest, because I conduct 3 waves of focus group, one for the KMT supporters, DPP supporters, and independent supporters. And each one of the focus groups consists of 8 young fellows. And the majority, actually no one said that Donald Trump is, President Trump gave Taiwanese young people kind of image that he's a business person. So at this time, it seems that Taiwan has no choice but rely on the U.S. But they also have some suspicions about possible U.S. support. So of course, it's not a big data survey, but at least from the focus group, the young fellows do express that kind of attitudes.
Please. Eric?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Hi, I'm George Koo. I have a question for both of you, and also a question for Eric.
Yes.
So the question for you, Eric, your poll shows that now the Taiwan young people are not interested in going to mainland to work. Is it possible the poll is skewed because the ones who are working in mainland are not participating in the poll? So that's my question. The question for both of you, if a conflict breaks out between Taiwan and China, how many people in Taiwan believes that the U.S. will come and fight for them? Thank you.
I'll give you a little time here. Yeah, I mean, my observation, George, was that a lot of people sort of expressed the similar concern about the fact that there was an increasing reliance on the United States on the one hand, but a concern about the reliability of the United States. And so I do think that, to your question, I think that there was pretty widespread concern that were there to be some situation that would arise with China, that the U.S. would be the only possible partner, yet an unreliable one. And I don't know how widespread that was, but I think that was certainly a concern expressed that I found, regardless of age, people were worried about the degree to which America would be willing to defend Taiwan, notwithstanding the obvious legal obligations I believe are in place here in the U.S.
Okay, George, about the first question, I do agree with you that those people who are working in mainland China are not able to answer the survey. So for that part, I do agree. But at least from those people who are in Taiwan, they do not express high interest. And one interesting data from Mainland Affairs Council, also conducted by Election Study Center, is about the general willingness to work, study in mainland China, because we continue to have questions asking whether you have a plan to go to China for work, for study, for that kind of questions in the next 3 years. And you do see that consistently only 1/3 of the Taiwanese want to work in China or study in China, regardless of the good time or bad time of the cross-strait relations. So there could be some, one interpretation is that those who want to go to China has been there, so they are not going back. The other interpretation is that China only attracts a certain type of people. So that means only, for example, like if I have family members who are in China and I might be also interested to work there. So, but for those people who have no interest working in China, they didn't care about the opportunities. They simply don't want to go. And those people are majority. That's kind of my interpretation about the current situation in Taiwan. So China indeed kind of a big market, attracts certain type of people, and their families. So those families are willing to go to China or to work or to study, but definitely not the majority of the Taiwanese. And about the second questions, that's actually interesting questions. And that also related to some debates about to what extent Taiwanese are willing to fight for it ourselves. Right? So, but I do think that those people who think, well, at least I can tell you that those pro-independent people do think that are more likely to believe that the U.S. may defend will be willing to defend Taiwan. But about the generic number about who the number of the proportion of people who believe that U.S. will fight for Taiwan, I don't have the number here, and but maybe we will consider to have that kind of questions in the future.
Hi, I'm Chen-hua from Global Taiwan Institute. So thanks for the presentation. One question for Lanhee in particular. So you did mention that Han Kuo-yu and the KMT's campaign was sort of reminiscent of sort of Donald Trump in 2016. Maybe some might say similar to the Brexit campaign, where there's this call to return to sort of the good old days, return to some sort of a national glory, some sort. Why do you think Taiwan's result went the other way, so to speak, right? Because Donald Trump won in 16, Brexit won in 18, I think, right? And so Taiwan's result, some have interpreted to be sort of the other way around. Do you agree with that? And if so, why do you think that is?
Well, I think Eric's data was suggested some of the reasons why that might be so. I mean, I think first of all, the narrative that was advanced about candidate Han was that he was risky, and particularly with respect to the cross-strait relationship, I think a lot of voters felt that risk was one that was too large to take. Even if a larger percentage that eventually voted for him may have been sympathetic to his arguments, that did not end up being the top reason why they picked the voter, why they picked the candidate they picked. They ended up picking based on security concerns, and they probably felt like he was less well equipped. I mean, I think one thing that was abundantly clear from Han's rhetoric was that he was not a typical politician, and not someone who had the typical background of a politician. But it seemed like, to a certain degree, while people may have had their desire to have a different kind of leader, they realized that would mean trading off the sense of comfort they get from someone who could handle an international crisis. And that probably, I think that the data seems to bear that out.
Yeah, I just add one more point. Don't forget that Hangul got more than 5.5 million votes. So he indeed consolidated the blue camp. So the problem of Hangul is he is not able to reach out the million voters. He's not capable to manage himself to become the mainstream. But he indeed consolidated the previous blue camps. And that's, don't forget about that point.
Eric, I think Mayor Han actually gained about 5.5 million votes. So I haven't heard your presentation cover about why he failed in the final election. To me, he started his strategy, night attack. You probably know the song he sings, right? Night attack H. And on the January 6th, he actually make a press conference, say, hey, waiting for the signal. The signal will come on the January 9th. And the KMT also held a press conference on the January 8th, saying, hey, tomorrow the signal will start. Unfortunately, the Five Eye Alliance, Australia, they disclosed all the trick that Alex tried to present, but they discovered. So that makes the whole situation change. And to me, that's the main reason the Mayor Han, he failed. I do have a question to you. In your last presentation, you had a slide show the Taiwan favor for to defend the Republic of China, ROC, right? So will there be a chance that the Tsai will be elected as the president of Taiwan? What will be her challenge in the coming next 4 years?
You mean she is a president of
Republic of China. But I said that will she had a chance to be elected as the president of Taiwan?
That's a good question, but that's also a difficult question. I think the so far we need to hear about her inauguration speech she made. But at this time, I don't think she will move toward Taiwan independence because it's just simply too risky. And of course, I always say that last time Tsai Ing-wen took away maintenance, the status quo from the KMT. And this time, Tsai Ing-wen took away Republic of China from the KMT. So now Tsai Ing-wen has two labels. One is a defender of Republic of China, and she is willing to maintain this status quo. So I think that I'm not sure that she will move toward Taiwan independence, given that DPP. One thing that I should emphasize is that DPP did not gain majority support. Tsai Ing-wen gained majority support. So it's her reputation over here this high, but DPP did not actually gain the general public support at all. So I don't think that Taiwan is ready to shift to the Taiwan independence at this point. So otherwise the VPP could gain the supermajority in the legislative. So I think I don't think Taiwan will make a risky move.
Hi, so I was living in Hong Kong this fall, and the South China Morning Post isn't exactly, shall we say, most even source. They're definitely very biased. But they, despite their slant, were really implying A, that Hong Kong basically was secured Taiwan's victory, and B, that the KMT has just utterly failed at reaching out to young voters, and that there isn't much of a future for the KMT with the Taiwanese youth. Particularly to that last point, what's your assessment on that? Do you think that's just because KMT voted or Taiwanese youth were repelled by some of Han's more offensive rhetoric, or do you really think that there is a much stronger pro-independence, more progressive, fill the blank, more DPP aligning platform? Do the youth align with the DPP more beyond Han's offensiveness?
Want me to answer? Okay, about the young voters, I think the progressive young voters are everywhere, not only in Taiwan but also in the U.S. Right? U.S. young voters tend to have progressive values, so I don't think Taiwan is a special case. And about pro-independence, I think for those young voters, they are not necessarily pro-independence, but definitely pro-Taiwanese identity. That's for sure. Because if you do the cross-tab about data, young voters still, the majority of the young voters still want to maintain the status quo. I conducted a wave of survey in high school for high school students last year. Even the high school students maintain the status quo still the majority, and not necessarily the pro-independence. Even though among high school students, the proportion of the pro-independence is greater than the general public, but still not a majority. So that's true. Young voters tend to pro-Taiwanese identity. But about the party supports, one thing you need to, one thing you probably want to know is that young voters tend to identify themselves as independent voters. So they shift relatively quickly. And so I always want to give an example like 2008. In 2008, Ma Ying-jeou gained a lot of young voters' support. But just 8 years later, the trend kind of reversed very quickly. So one of my students who is doing young voters changing identities also showed that they tend to have a low party identification, and they will change their party support relatively quickly. So this result indicates that KMT has no chance at all? I don't think so, because otherwise in fact, here in 2008, I remember at Stanford's conference, some scholars say that the DPP won't come back in like 15 years. But we still have 8 years.
Democrats and Republicans. Secretary Schultz.
The people of Hong Kong, it seems to me, are not protesters, they're freedom fighters. And they're fighting a fight that has global implications. And at least as I read about it, the Taiwanese grasped that point clearly in their election. But as you talk about China and what it might do, I've always wondered if China wants to disrupt Taiwan. Taiwan's economy is heavily dependent on international trade. China could take a couple of submarines and release mines throughout harbors and bring that trade to a halt, and it would absolutely shut down the Taiwanese. Has people thought about how you might respond to it?
Okay, that's a good question, and thank you, Secretary Schultz. And again, let me go back to the focus group I talked about last year with the young fellows. And those young people do afraid of China's possible threats, because over the past few years, they send not only submarines but flight jets around Taiwan. And those young people do think it's a big threat. But that's why they thought that Taiwan's security somehow relied on the U.S. supports. That's why That's how the young people feel about. So when they thought that in these elections, when the sovereignty issue and security issue become salient, and I can see that young people are really kind of being mobilized to go out to support Tsai Ing-wen. But they do think that China's possible military threats, they do concerned about China's military threats. That's why they thought that the U.S. would play a very important role to defend Taiwan somehow.
Yeah, I think also the strong consensus against the one country, two systems model, against the 1992 consensus suggests that the way that a lot of people in Taiwan view the Hong Kong situation is we don't want to be there. And so I think that is certainly a reflection of public opinion regarding the situation in Hong Kong.
There's one question about the Hong Kong's incidence implication. So 60% of the Taiwanese are worried that the Taiwan will become Hong Kong's case actually worried them. More than 60% of the people think about that. And one data I didn't show is that consistently in the last year, more than 60% of the Taiwanese support Hong Kong's protests. That's a kind of consistent number. 6-0. More than 60%. So sometimes 63, 62, so more than 60%. So Hong Kong's incident do worry Taiwanese, and they don't want, and that's why Taiwanese oppose one country, two systems.
Thank you for the presentation. I got two questions. First one is about some report in last election, some underground gambling money coming to Taiwan for the 2020 election. And I'm wondering whether you have data for 2018. And second question is, it will be interesting to see your polls now with the reality of the coronavirus pandemic from China. Thanks.
Okay, for the second question, no, I don't have the data. Because after the elections, we want to take a break. So, and the second question is about the underground gambling money. Also, I don't have the data, but I don't think it's not necessarily all come from China. Because it's underground, so you are not able to observe the resources. So sometimes these are all rumors. So for example, let me just give you an anecdotal example. One of my friends who called me one day saying that he wants to put 1.8 million Taiwanese dollars to gambling. And I asked him about the odds. He said that the odds is even. Tsai Ing-wen versus Taiwan is even. So I said, well, it seems that Tsai Ing-wen has a more chance to win. And but to me, this type of gambling, if that's a real gambling case, I thought this actually helps Tsai Ing-wen, because Tsai Ing-wen is lead in all public opinion polls, and people won't be joking about their money. So once they put monies on Tsai Ing-wen, they will definitely support Tsai Ing-wen. They will also campaign to Tsai Ing-wen. So in that kind of case, you don't know actually the sources, but that's just an anecdotal stories. I don't know if that's true.
I want to take just one more question before we wrap up. Yes.
Hi, thank you for the great presentation. My name is Vanessa. I monitored the Taiwanese election at the Stanford Internet Observatory. A lot of similar observations. One graph that was particularly interesting was the one where you showed the political affiliations, and I was really surprised to see how large of a share identifies as independent. And I was wondering if you have any information on. Within that group, are there strong leanings? Because if not, then that could be an indicator of why Taiwan is maybe more resistant to populism. And I was just wondering what you know about that. Thank you.
You mean those independent voters among them?
So for example, in the United States, it's often said that 1 in 3 voters is independent, but actually within those independent voters, 90% lean in one direction or the other very heavily.
Okay.
And I was wondering if you know anything about that for this particular data.
No, I don't have that kind of, but normally when we try to dissect those independents, we sometimes use the news resources. So we ask them what kind of TV stations. But those are not kind of a stable measure at all.
I'd like to thank all of you for attending, and especially our speakers for fabulous presentations, and we hope to see you on February 21st at our next event.